Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. I'm here today to welcome Marly Brodsky to the show. Welcome, Marly.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you for
Marly,
having me. I'm so
no,
excited.
you're welcome, Marly. And you're all the way from Pennsylvania, and it's like Tuesday evening in Pennsylvania, and Wednesday morning here. Even though we're past and future, right now we're in the present, and boy, have we got a lot to chat about today. And yeah, I'm super honored to have you on the show. So thank you for joining. You're the founder and CEO of MedCompanion, and we can see that beautiful logo in the background. I've just looked at it actually in more detail with the love heart and the person in the middle. Yeah, that's very cool. That's my brand advertising and communications background coming through there. So great logo. But yeah, founder and CEO of MedCompanion, which is a virtual patient advocacy service that supports individuals through complex medical journeys with empathy and real-time guidance, especially during critical decision making. You're an immigrant from Panama who faced homelessness. You had a brain tumor at 18. You later lived in the jungle for 2 months, I think, and you studied indigenous health practices. You're also a mum, and you blend personal insight with professional purpose to redesign healthcare navigation. I don't even know where to start because there's just so much. And thank you for all your vulnerability. And, like when I have people book in for the pod, I always get them to answer some questions. And you just gave it to me all. And I read it and I was like, whoa, like this is a lot to talk about, unpack. But I'll let you share your journey and then I guess ultimately how it came to Med Companion based on your life journey, if you like.
Sure. Where to start? So as you mentioned, I am an immigrant from Panama. I was born there. All of my extended family is still there, so it holds a very special place in my heart still. It's something I get to share with my children and husband now. But yeah, I was an immigrant from Panama, grew up in California, and I went on to study pre-medicine. So my biggest goal was to become a doctor. I really just wanted to help people, and I knew that at a very early age. But as you mentioned, I had to overcome a brain tumor at the age of 18. So that happened probably like my first semester in college. So to finally get into college and be on the right path towards medical school and all of a sudden have to face this challenge was very difficult. And as a result, I did not get into medical school, as you can imagine. And I was crushed. It really was soul crushing to not feel like I fulfilled a dream of mine. Um, but in the end, I did end up founding this amazing company called MedCompanion that allows me to help more people than I ever could as a physician. So it's very interesting how your journey just takes you through different forms of yourself, and in that evolution, you end up often finding a better path.
Yeah, quite incredible. Like, is it okay if I ask questions around like your journey, like in terms of, so
Sure.
immigrant in Panama becomes homeless. Like, what was that like for you? Like, in terms of like, was that like, do you feel like when we talk about different forms, do you feel like from that outset that was, you know, formed a lot of your who you are now?
Yes, yes, it did. And I will say this. So my parents used to own a very small and successful landscape company growing up. So as immigrants, my dad had started this landscape company that was very successful. It provided a really good lifestyle for us. But as any business, it faced some challenges. And unfortunately, bringing on the wrong business partner caused us to lose not just the company, but our home. And that was a very traumatic experience at the age of 12, being the oldest sibling of at that time three, and then finding out that in that process my mom was also pregnant with a fourth on the way was very difficult because you never expect to be in that situation, especially not as a teenager. But as difficult as that was, I learned how to be resourceful as a result of being homeless. You learn how to use your resources, you learn how to become resourceful. And those are qualities that, as a founder of a business, I have found to be very useful and just in life in general.
Yeah, wow. And so then we go to 2000, well, not 2000, we go to, you turn 18 and you you have a brain tumor, which is
Yeah.
quite huge in itself and almost, well, it's
Mhm.
life-threatening, right? It's a brain tumor.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you? And like, in terms of how long did it take for you to get better? Obviously it sounds like to me that informed also a lot to do with MedCompanion as well, based on what I've read about you and etc. But like, yeah, what was that like? What happened there?
Oh man. So that was a different type of experience because having been homeless, going to college was not something that I felt I had in my cards. I felt like it was impossible to accomplish something like that. Homeless, no money, going to school, getting the grades because it was the right thing to do, not necessarily because I thought that I could go to college. Um, but ultimately, there was a teacher that in high school really inspired me to go to college and believe that anything was possible. And she made it her priority to make sure that I could. So she helped me through all the scholarships and application process, and ultimately I got a full ride to college. So it was a great experience to be like, this is how my life changes. This is how I'm going to get out of homelessness. This is how I'm going to overcome this chapter of my life. And then within the first 2 months of being in college, I started to feel sick. Woke up one morning, couldn't feel half my body, and I called my parents, and they took me to the hospital. And that's when I found out I had a brain tumor. And it almost just felt like life wasn't fair. Like I
Yeah.
finally made it to college, which is not even in the books for me. And I now have a brain tumor. And I'm being told that this is going to change my life. And I needed to withdraw my scholarships and withdraw from school, which I was not ready to do. So I just remember sitting in the dean's office and they're giving me all my different options. And I had my parents with me and they're like, well, here's the paperwork. Here's where you need to sign. Here's how you withdraw from school and, come back to us if you're better kind of situation. And I became so angry at life at that moment. I was just so upset that I took the papers and I ripped them, never signed them. I ripped them. And I said, I worked very hard to get here. And if if this is how I'm gonna go, then I'm gonna go trying. I'm gonna go doing what I worked so hard to do, which is get to college. So as a result, my grades suffered. I went from being a straight A student to like a 2.6 student, so very average, barely able to graduate, but I graduated. And I was very proud of that accomplishment because I didn't even think I was going to get through college having a brain tumor and having to go through treatment while being a student, while missing classes. So it was very difficult. And while I accomplished that milestone and graduated, I didn't get into medical school because I didn't have the grades.
Wow. And you fully recovered from the brain tumor like that. How long was that period of, from treatment through to then actually recovering?
It was a long process. So I didn't have health insurance, and there was no way that I could afford treatment in the States. So my parents found a doctor in Mexico. Since we lived in California, crossing the border, a 20-minute drive, I can be in Mexico and see a doctor there. So they found um, a holistic doctor who took my case and worked with me on alternative medicine, radiation therapy, and ultimately got me through that through my health, restored my health. And it was probably a good like 18 months of really intense therapy and medication and treatment. And afterward, it was a lot of just managing my symptoms, making sure I was okay. And over time, just going in for a lot of different head CTs to make sure that my brain tumor was good.
Wow, you are like
Yeah.
what a journey. And so then you go. So the next time, I want to jump to the jungle. So this is all obviously forming like it's almost like culminating into you. It's like setting up MedCompanion. Did you then at
Yeah.
what point and when did you start MedCompanion? When did you go to the jungle? Like how did that all come together?
Yeah, so my third year in college, at this point, I was feeling a lot better. I got a scholarship to to work on a project, a thesis project for my public health major, and I was working with a mentor, Dr. Cynthia Park, and I told her, I said, you know, I really want to go experience healthcare and public health at its most scarce form. Like, I want to go where people don't have true access to health, and I want to learn what that's like. I want to learn how it impacts their ability to live a healthy life. So she said, you know, no one's ever wanted to go out of the country to do this. So you're going to have to write a proposal and submit an appeal and do all these things. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. I'll submit that. So I went through that process. She helped me write my proposal. She helped me appeal my case, and the school approved it. So I had enough money to go and get some resources. At the time, I was working as a medical scribe. So several of the doctors made donations so I could bring things into the jungle. And I hired my sister, who was a senior in high school at the time, to be my assistant. So telling my parents that my sister and I, who are like the biggest girly girls, were going to go for 2 months and live in a jungle in a little hut was laughable. I don't think they believed me at first. But we did. And, you know, I went there thinking that I was going to go make such an impact. And the reality was that that experience completely changed my life. Living in the jungle, getting to see what people go through every single day just to go to the doctor, just to get some help, just to get some treatments, walking 3 to 6 hours a day just to go to the nearest clinic, and being in a place that had no electricity, no drinkable water, and they had to learn to survive with the resources at hand was life-changing. And it's still very close to my heart. Since that experience, I have done charity work for the last 13 years. I now get to go back and do health education, provide additional resources, and now I get to do it with my husband and children. So it's still something I carry dearly.
Where in the jungle did you go? Like which bit of the jungle? Like which area?
Oh man. Oh, I was very deep in the jungle. I lived with this tribe called Nobe Bugle in Panama. And in order to get to that part of the jungle, we had to we had to go on a car ride, followed by a horse ride, followed by a boat ride, and then followed by another horse ride. So it was several hours deep into the jungle.
And excuse me. Excuse me. In terms of your spirituality coming through, right? So like resourcefulness as kind of being homeless. I'm sure there was so much that came out of your experience from a brain tumor as well. Then you decide you want to go to the jungle and, understand what's going on from a health perspective with, underprivileged, society jungle. I'm not even getting my words out properly here. what from a spiritual perspective came up for you being in a remote aspect of the jungle? And at that point, were you thinking about starting your own company, or was that still like how far away was MedCompanion coming from
Oh,
your
yeah,
jungle experience?
yeah. Oh, MedCompanion was still like 15 years away from that experience. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
so what came up for you from your like, because you did mention around, I think you talked about spirituality. You've talked
Mhm.
about rejection and pivots and things like that. But was the spirituality, did that come out through the jungle? Like what really came out from, obviously besides what you were there to study and do, but like what
Yeah.
was coming up for you when you were in the jungle?
Yeah. So I would say like the spirituality has been with me since I was a little girl. My dad used to be a pastor at random churches. He used to get invited to preach. So we grew up with that and just having a lot of faith. So that's where my spirituality comes from, is just knowing that everything will be okay and just always having faith over fear all the time. So being in the jungle and just being in nature and just feeling so close to the beautiful scenery and like the serene side of the jungle was very spiritual, but also it brought out a lot of gratitude. It brought out a lot of things that we take for granted, even like the smallest things that we take for granted, like having a toilet. I was like, I never thought I'd be so grateful for a toilet, but having a toilet is something I was like so grateful for when I came
Yeah.
back. Having good water to drink, having food, having the ability to go to the doctor. And my experience at the jungle, I did end up getting really sick from that. So coming back to the States, I had malaria, I had typhoid fever, I had salmonella, I caught like everything from the jungle. But the difference was that when I got to the States and I went to the doctor, I got better because I had access to care. I had the
Yeah.
ability to feel better. So within a week, I was back to normal. And I was very grateful for that too.
So I've got a question for you, right? And well, then and we're going to go into Med Companion next. But in terms of you faced a lot of adversity in your life, and you
Mhm.
talked about, like I can't remember exactly what you said, but you talked about that it will be like knowing that everything will be okay, faith over fear.
Mhm.
How do you know that everything's going to be okay, faith over fear, when you're faced with such forms of adversity? How did you always know
Mhm.
everything would be okay? Was that the spirituality kicking in? Because I know that even for myself, at times when you're, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. When you have those moments of adversity, whatever that looks like, you're just like, what is this? This is not what I didn't sign up for this. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it takes a lot to actually be able to go, it's going to be okay. Because in those points
Yeah.
in time, it's like, this is not okay. This is like, why? You know?
So it doesn't just come naturally. It takes a moment because in that moment you're either angry, you're sad, you're scared, whatever it is you're feeling. And I think it's just so important to acknowledge that feeling. It's so important to say like, man, I am so sick. I am so scared. I am so depressed, whatever it may be. I think it's so important to acknowledge that and then change the perspective and say, like, I don't know why this is happening right now, but I know there's a greater purpose and I know that I will be okay. And I know that this is somehow going to make sense in the future. And just thinking that way really allows you to move forward because it validates your feelings, but it also allows you to know that, you know what, this is happening for a reason. I don't know what that is yet, but I know there's a reason for this.
Yeah, I totally buy all of that. I mean, I just wanted to ask the question as well because it's like I agree with you, but it's taken me a long time to actually go, you know what, like this is not making sense right now. There's all these pieces of this puzzle, if you like, that are
Yeah.
happening. It's happening to
Yeah.
me, but if the more I try and hold on to it, or the more I try and force the outcome or control it,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
becomes even more painful, if you like, or like fearful. You're more fearful. But with the minute you surrender and you go, okay, this is what it is. What am I learning from
Mhm.
this? What is the learning coming out of this, no matter how bad the situation is? I think that's when you have that
Yeah.
ability to be able to go get that fresh perspective
Yeah.
and pivot or do it differently or look forward and go, well, that happened. And do you know what I mean? Like, I think that for me is what's, enabled me to then be less attached to the
Yeah.
situation or the outcome. Tell us
Yeah.
about then. So you've homeless, you've had a brain tumor, you've been to the jungle, and I'm not just talking about this lightly, but there's a lot that's been happening.
Yeah.
You're a mum. Like, when did MedCompanion and how did MedCompanion come about?
Yeah. So once I got back from the jungle, I finished my last year in college and I presented my findings of my experience in the jungle in front of a lot of people in an auditorium, which was amazing. Um, the tribe actually made me a little gown of the tribal members. So I had a
Oh,
gown and I presented that in college. But as I mentioned, I was rejected from medical school. So what I ended up doing instead was I became a traveling project manager for the medical scribe company I was working for. In that process, I stayed for about 15 years working in that company. I had the opportunity to pioneer and innovate medical scribes in the outpatient setting. I did do some work in Australia for a little
oh,
bit as
cool.
well during that time. Yeah, I worked with some
Whereabouts?
of the GPs, Melbourne. So I worked with some of the GPs, yeah, in that area, just trying to provide strategy. So I became more of a health strategist and helping doctors across the country in Australia and Canada how to provide better care for patients while still being able to optimize their ROI and get paid for all the work that they're doing. So that was one of the things I helped with. And in like 2020 after the pandemic, I was just burnt out. I was a new
Uh,
mom. I had a toddler, I had a newborn. I was also getting my MBA at that time. So I was just done and I quit. I quit my job. Um, which was did not come lightly, but it was something that needed to happen. I wanted to focus on being a mom. My daughter's health at that time was struggling. She was going through a lot of things in her early life, so I wanted to focus on her. And in that process, I also saw my grandmother be diagnosed with breast cancer and then pass away within 3 months. And
sorry.
that was really, oh, thank you. That was really the incident that had me basically find a new form for me. I was no longer just an executive at a scribe company or a mom. I was someone that was angry at the health system. I was angry that it failed my grandmother. I started to see all the gaps. And as I mentioned, you don't understand what you're learning in the moment of adversity. But in that moment, I realized that all those 15 years of working in the medical scribe industry had prepared me to understand healthcare at its steepest form, from a doctor standpoint, from a patient standpoint, from a family member standpoint. And then now living that through my grandmother, I had this like fire that I'm like, I am somebody that can do something about this. So when I started doing some research, I started to see what was out there. I couldn't find the solution that I was looking for. So it just became this like urge or itch. And I remember I was sleeping one night and I had this like vision, like everything just started to make sense in my head. And I woke up, it was 2 in the morning. I looked at my husband. I was like, I figured it out. I know how I'm going to solve this.
I love
And I
it.
turned to him. I woke him up and I was like, we're going to write my business plan right now because it's fresh in my head. I'm going to do it. So we took, I think it was like an electricity bill that we had sitting on our nightstand, turned it over. I started writing everything. It wasn't called MedCompanion. I don't even know what placeholder I gave it. I think it was like concierge medicine or concierge patient care, something crazy. And I wrote it out. And then fear kicked in. So I didn't do anything with it for a bit. It kind of just sat there. And during one of my final projects in business school, when I was getting my MBA, one of the professors assigned a project that said, I want you to write a page about a business you would start if you knew that you couldn't fail and you had unlimited resources. What would you do? So I wrote all about MedCompanion because I already had it fresh in my head, and I submitted that. The professor said that he needed to talk to me. So I was like, oh, shoot, I did something wrong. And he called me and he was like, is this a real company? And I told him, no, it's just something I've been thinking about. Something I would do if I could. And he said, I think you should. I think you should do it. And that was kind of like my sign that I'm like, Marley, like maybe you should do it. And at the end of 2021, it's when I officially moved forward with it.
Wow, what a journey, what a story. Like you just in terms of, I want to acknowledge all of everything, but like, when you quit, like you were burnt out, you were done, you quit. I've been there, I've done that. And it doesn't go, like you said, it doesn't go you think about it a lot, but I don't know about you, but in that very moment of quitting, and it was mine was over a long period of time, but I quit, and I remember going outside, and I don't know about how it worked, how it happened for you, but I had been thinking about it. I was almost like subconsciously been thinking about it, and then this one day, I just went outside, and I'm like, I looked up like this, and I just went, I'm quitting, and it was like the clouds opened up, the sky opened up for me. And I went back in and then I went, I'm quitting. And I was just like, and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm quitting. I'm done. Like, and that was just it for me. And then the fear, everything kicked in and I ended up going back in to the role I was in for, oh, I got a new role actually out of it. But like it took a few more years before then actually what I'm doing now. And so like for you, like, like it's very quite I really relate in terms of it's like I've got this big idea and you're like, oh, and you're waking up to it, you're getting these visions, but then it's almost like so scary because it's so different, so impactful, so big. You have these fear moments around it. And I don't know if you felt that or experienced that as well, where it's just like, oh, this is too big. I actually don't know what to do with this, but yet I'm back again at it, and then I'm pulling away from it, and then I'm back at it. And it's just funny how, do you know what I mean? Like, is that kind of what was happening for you as well?
And absolutely. I mean, when I just remember being so done that I did the same thing. I felt so bad too because I didn't even talk to my husband about it. I was just so done that I quit. And then I was like, oh shoot, now I got to tell my husband I quit my job. And he's amazing. So when I went to him and I explained, why I quit and where I was feeling, he was like, it's okay. We're gonna figure it out. You get to be a mom, you get to take some time. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Like, this was such a big part of my life. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Being a business owner was definitely not something I thought I would ever be. It's not something that I was like, oh, I want to be a business owner one day. That never even crossed my mind. But yeah, and it was like so scary. It took a while from when I had the idea and I wrote it out and I wrote it for my class project. It took a while for me to feel confident and comfortable to say, okay, I think I can do this. I think I'm going to do this. And even now as a founder, you go through so many evolutions in
Ugh.
the business that fear never really goes away. There's a new fear every single time you
Oh,
do
I know.
something. So, yeah, so you just have to learn to basically create these like micro steps that just get you a little bit closer to that bigger dream. And I think that has been very helpful for me because even today, there's still so much fear in the things that I do and scaling the business and bringing in new partnerships and hiring more people. It just takes so much and it's so much bigger than I imagined. So I have to scale back and just be like, okay, how am I going to get here? What are the little things I can do that I'm very confident in order to achieve the bigger goals?
Yeah.
And that's
And
that's
doing
how
it
I
in a
do it.
and doing it in a sustainable way, right? Because you've burnt out before. How do you do it? Because you are a high performer. It sounds like I'm the same. Like, obviously that high performer, you have this relentless energy. You have a big dream. You want to make real impact in the world, positive and real impact in the world. You could work 24/7 if you wanted to because you're constantly thinking, right? But that's not sustainable, and you've obviously, had your own health experiences, you've got a family, all of that sort of stuff. So you have to take that into consideration as well. It's like, and it's not easy being a founder because, like you say, you've always got things you could be doing in your business. How do you juggle that? How do you ensure that you aren't, you know, burning
Yeah.
yourself out again?
So I learned a lot from what I was doing in corporate and my previous role. And I knew that I didn't want to end up in that same situation. I knew that I wanted to build something greater and something that was going to bring me joy in all aspects of my life. And in order to do that, I had to set up um, just better scenarios for myself and also just have very strict no's available. So instead of saying yes to everything, really thinking big picture, like if I say yes to this, is it going to bring me closer to what I'm trying to do, or is it going to be a distraction, right? Because as a founder, the shiny object syndrome is huge. You get easily distracted by everything, so you have to preserve your energy and set boundaries to make sure that you're staying in alignment. And I also knew that I wanted this to be different. I wanted to set those boundaries. I wanted to make sure that I was pouring into my own cup first so that I can actually be a better mother and a better leader. So that's something that's changed. So I exercise every day. I do meditation. I journal. That's where my spiritual side still comes into play. I read my Bible every day too. And I have my family who are very spiritual people as well. So we're always sharing things that we read or things that we saw. So pouring into my own cup first became a priority. It's a non-negotiable for me. And it has allowed me to be a better leader. It has allowed me to show up better as a mother. And just setting boundaries and being okay with saying no has made a big difference.
Amazing. And so how big is MedCompanion going to be? Like how big is it right now? How many, like how big's your team? Like, what's your intentions for MedCompanion?
Yeah, so MedCompanion is currently a national company, so we are able to support patients across every state here in the States. We have a good solid team of nurses and certified medical assistants that work on the back end of our app in order to support patients. So what we do is not necessarily AI. We utilize technology and AI to make sure that we are efficient, but really the face of the business comes from that human connection and human touch. So we have a pretty significant team. We're currently in the process of scaling. We've recently started partnering with different health systems across the country to offer the service to their patients. And then we also have family members who sign up to provide a medical companion to their family members.
Wow. You are one amazing woman. Like just listening to you and you've had so many different forms. Like you've been formless quite a few times and you can kind of see how it works in terms of you go from one form and then you kind of reshape and you explore and you're curious, you're kind of going into the deep unknown to then go to the next form. And that's the beauty of what
Yeah.
you're talking about here is that it doesn't just stop in one place. Like this is the opportunity to pivot, to be able to then bounce forward
Yeah.
and almost take take what you're doing to the next stage, the next phase, but doing it in a way that works for you and continues to fill your cup up. What advice would you give to a anyone facing a form of adversity, one, and what advice would you give to someone about like that? And then also in terms of from a founder perspective.
Yeah. So I would say anyone facing adversity, first and foremost, is like don't lose your faith. Whether you believe in God or a higher power or the universe, like just keep your faith that everything is going to work out. And I live by the words my dad told me when I was going through my brain tumor. I became very depressed and miserable. And I remember my dad told me, he was like, honey, pain is inevitable, but being miserable is a choice. So you're going to go through adversity, you're going to go through pain, but really what you do with that and choosing to be miserable is still your choice. So you can either choose to be miserable or you can choose to make the most of it. So that's what I would say to someone going through adversity. Um, for someone that is looking to start a business or become a founder is to just be delusional enough to believe in yourself and go after that and to never let money be the reason that you don't pursue your dreams.
Oh, love that because I haven't heard someone say on the pod yet, don't let money get in the way of pursuing your dreams because I think we so often do, like in terms of, material things, money, oh God, I need this money, but like, and then it almost kind of keeps us stuck or keeps us in the familiar and the comfortable versus, well, what if I had to reimagine, reshape, and almost like look at things differently to allow my dream to come to life. And that's that's that delusional piece as well. Like, I think we use the term delusional is can also be seen quite often as a negative, but I haven't thought about it as such, like you're talking about in a positive framed way. Yeah, it's quite incredible. I have loved our chat today. You're a very inspiring woman. I feel like there is a book that's going to come at some point in time from you. And I can see
You
the
know, I've never
chapters.
I've I've never thought about writing a book, but so many people have told me in the last couple of years, like, oh, I feel like you should write a book. I feel like there should be a book. So now I'm like maybe manifesting it that I
Yeah,
am going to
manifesting
write
a
a book.
book or keynote speaking or something because it's quite the journey. But you can see how it's all come together, and like I guess it's like similar but different in terms of I think from what we experience in life, our lived experiences form who we are, and that anything can be possible and you can be delusional and that your dreams can come to life, but it takes that persistence as well. It takes that kind of commitment and waking up every day being grateful like you say. How do we find out more about you, Marly? Where do we go to get more information about MedCompanion, your amazing stories, lived experiences?
Experiences. Yeah, absolutely. So for MedCompanion, you can find more about us at www.medcompanion.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Marly_Brodsky, just my name. Um, and also on LinkedIn as Marly Brodsky.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, like incredible. Like yeah, inspired me. My day is just starting. Well, I'm into it, but yeah, like people like you talking and listening and hearing your stories, like it's, you're making huge impact in the world and proving that no matter what we face, there's always a way to keep bouncing forward.
Yes, absolutely. I strongly believe that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening and thank you for coming on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.